Imagine this: every call you make, every text you send, every post you share, tracked, monitored, and stored. In Kenya, this isn't a dystopian fantasy, it's reality. Behind the glitz of Nairobi's skyline lies a shadowy network of surveillance, disappearances, and repression. And now, with the Finance Bill 2024 sparking nationwide protests, Kenya's youth are paying the price. But how deep does this go? And who's really pulling the strings? Activists vanishing into thin air. Protests met with brute force. A government tightening its grip on power. What's the connection? And why is Kenya's Gen Z at the center of this storm? Tonight, we dive into the chilling truth behind Kenya's surveillance state, the disappearances of activists, and the youth-led uprising that's shaking the nation to its core. The Finance Bill 2024 was the spark that lit a wildfire of protests. A bill meant to increase government revenue turned into a national crisis, burdening Kenyans with heavy taxes on essential goods like fuel, food, and digital services. For Kenya's youth, already grappling with unemployment and economic inequality, this was the final straw. It was the young people, Gen Z, who took to the streets, refusing to accept economic oppression. But was the government ready for this resistance? Not quite. Instead of dialogue, they responded with surveillance, intimidation, and violence. A 2017 report titled Track, Capture, Kill exposed Kenya's deep state surveillance system. The National Intelligence Service, NIS, has direct access to communication networks, allowing them to monitor, track, and target individuals. What started as counterterrorism operations quickly evolved into a tool to suppress dissent, with activists, journalists, and opposition voices being spied on, arrested, or worse, disappeared. The government's surveillance apparatus, once justified as a means to combat terrorism, is now being weaponized against its own citizens. At the heart of Kenya's surveillance operations is the National Intelligence Service, NIS, the agency with unrestricted access to phone networks. Every intercepted call, every tracked phone, every hacked message feeds into a wider system of control. The NIS works alongside special police units like the Anti-Terror Police Unit, ATPU, to monitor, detain, and in some cases, eliminate perceived threats to the state. Telecommunications companies are key players in this system. Kenyan service providers, including Safaricom, grant intelligence agencies access to call logs and location data. While officially data can only be released with a court order, reports indicate that security agencies often bypass these procedures, tracking activists and journalists in real time. For some, being on the government's radar is a death sentence. But the government doesn't just rely on telecom providers. IMSI catchers, military-grade surveillance devices, are used to mimic cell towers, tricking phones into connecting and revealing their exact locations. Activists on the move unknowingly carry a homing device in their pocket. If flagged, security forces can move in before their targets even realize they're being watched. The government's operations follow a chilling pattern: first surveillance, then capture, sometimes execution. Activists have reported being followed, their calls tapped, and their movements preemptively countered. Some disappear without a trace. Others, like human rights lawyer Willie Kamani, were found tortured and executed. The message is clear: dissent comes at a cost. Kenya's legal framework enables these abuses. The Security Laws, Amendment Act of 2014, and vague counterterrorism regulations provide broad powers to intercept communications and detain individuals without due process. The result? A national security apparatus that can justify almost any action in the name of public safety. But Kenya's youth are adapting. Gen Z activists are switching to encrypted platforms, using VPNs, and removing SIM cards to avoid tracking. Protesters are learning to stay steps ahead. From TikTok videos to viral Twitter threads, Kenya's youth are using every tool at their disposal to hold the government accountable. But their bravery comes at a cost. Many young activists have been arrested, harassed, or gone missing, yet their resolve remains unshaken. For families of the disappeared, answers remain elusive. The government denies involvement, while police dismiss cases as isolated incidents. But with a rising number of activists going missing, human rights organizations are demanding accountability. Will Kenya's leadership answer, or will they continue to operate in the shadows? Kenya's struggle for democracy is at a turning point. The tools of mass surveillance, once justified for national security, are now being used to stifle opposition. But freedom cannot be erased with a single keystroke. The fight for truth continues. The question is, will you speak out before it's too late?